Hi everyone, this is Candidate Master Isaac Steincamp, and as promised, I wanted to share my simul game against Alexander Shabalov, which unfortunately I wound up losing, but was actually much closer than I had anticipated. And I was kind of excited to see how I would stack up against the four-time U.S. chess champion and the reigning 2015 U.S. Open chess champion. So I was playing black in this game, and there were about 19 other players, so about 20 total, and over a wide rating range. So we had absolute beginners to players who are expert and masters. I was one of the highest rated players present at the simul, but there were a bunch of really close games that I wish I had more time to watch. So for this game, I prepared for Alexander Shabalov to play 1d4 or 1c4 or one knight f3 because I had seen him playing that opening a lot more in recent tournaments. So I had spent the last 3 or 4 days before the simul making sure I knew all my opening theories so I could get a good game. And of course, right off the bat, I get thrown out of my preparation with 1e4. But okay, like I've seen, I've obviously seen this move a lot, so I'm familiar with the theory. It's just not what I was hoping for. So I went into my Sicilian Dragon, and Shabalov went for the queen takes d4 line, which I guess you could say is a little bit more adventurous. It's not definitely not main line. I when I was breaking down what lines Shabalov could go for, I knew he could play 1e4, but I thought he would go for a Marozzi bind because in a simul, it'd be easier to have a position where you can grind and you can make a couple mistakes, but at the same time you might still have an edge. So I thought he might do that, but with queen takes d4, things get really sharp really quickly, and he almost pays the price for it. So we go through the main line. So far, this is all normal. And so here, the main line is to play d5 immediately with the idea of bishop to f5. And, I couldn't exactly remember theory, but I knew at this point it wasn't critical yet because there's no way white can get a rook onto d1 on his next move. And so here I decided to play bishop to g7 instead of d5 because I can have a target here on b2. I mean, I obviously expect he'll play knight to c3, but, when I play d5, I have the added benefit that my bishop's ready to rake down on the b2 square. And right now, I just want to take over the fact that white's moved his queen a lot, so I want to get an advantage in development. So my opponent played knight to c3. So it's critical here that I play d5, because if I castle, white can either queenside castle or play rook to d1, and now it's not so clear how I'm getting this bishop out from c8. I'm almost in a strategically lost position. So it's essential that I play the move d5, and it's a pawn sacrifice, but I get an active queen. Shabalov played queen to e3, which is, obvious. Castles. I need to get my king out of the center. And I wasn't quite sure what Shabalov was going to do here. I thought he was just going to play like bishop to b5 or bishop to c4 and ask me how I'm going to deal with the d6 pawn. But he also has to worry about moves like knight to b4 at some point after takes d6, so he decided to castle here. This actually turns out to be extremely dangerous. So here I played e takes d6. There's really nothing else I can do here because I don't want to allow d takes e7. Rook takes d6 and queen to c8. So if you look at this position, I'm down a pawn, but not without compensation. I've developed all four of my minor pieces. My two bishops are pointed at the king's side. And even though I'm down a pawn on c7, I have the half-open file. And having control over that, and it being the same file as Shabalov's king, it's fair compensation. Meanwhile, white still has to figure out how he wants to develop his rook and bishop, so his development isn't quite complete. Here he played the move bishop to b5. So here, this was my first missed opportunity to play for an advantage. I actually took a pass on this move, and I thought I was winning material on a move I'll show you after we go over some lines. So I'll show you what Shabalov told me after the game that he saw. And he wasn't quite sure because, obviously he's in a simul, he's going to move quickly, but he was worried about a6, and said after the game he thought I could play for more. But after some computer analysis, bishop takes c6, knight to c4, this is what Shabalov was worried about. Queen to c5, takes, and then takes his bishop. And I'm not so sure. I saw positions like this, not exactly this variation. But I guess my thought was, okay, white will probably take on f8. I'm still down a pawn, but my structure's gotten worse. But at the same time, I have a pair of bishops, but I don't know if I'm really playing for anything more than, equality, because there's just not enough dynamicism on the board. But there is better here, actually, for black, instead of a6. And the move was knight to b4. And this was a move that I spent most of the first go around looking at before I passed because I didn't know what to do after knight to d4. And there's actually a kind of a cool way to connect the dots here with knight takes a2 check. The idea being that white needs to move his king to safety. I get time to play knight takes c3. After queen takes, b takes c3, it's clear that white's gotten his pawn back. Black's gotten his pawn back, and I have more than enough compensation. Well, actually, I wouldn't need to say compensation anymore because material is equal. And white is now the one who's struggling. Maybe I can put a rook onto c8 and target the c3 pawn. This bishop on g7 could be a monster. And even though white's managed to develop all of his pieces are coordinated, and his rook on d6 looks a little bit stuck. The computer gave this about a negative 1.5 evaluation. So obviously this would have been promising, but I would have had to have connected the dots after knight takes a2 check. And I guess the thing that I missed here was after knight takes a2, white can't play knight takes a2 because now I can take on d4, and I'm threatening checkmate on c2. And this is actually a theme that I miss with the more critical line, a line that would have been a much bigger advantage for black. Okay, so here in this position, I was trying to be active, and after seeing the knight b4 and then white had knight d4 and not connecting the dots to knight takes a2, I was starting to realize that, okay, I can never really activate my f8 rook. And I kind of realized kind of like a little bit of a trap here. Rook to e8, white has to put the queen on d2, and then here I had bishop to f8. The idea being that I'm trapping white's rook and white has to give up the exchange. And so here I thought, in my valuation that I was, just winning an exchange. And Shabalov played knight to d5. And having already used a pass and only having one more pass left for the game, I kind of trusted Shabalov's analysis too much here and just played knight takes d5. And it didn't resolve in a position that, gave me a substantial advantage. But I actually, if I had just thought, for myself here a little bit, I probably would have won this game. And, I encourage you to pause the video and try to figure this one out to its completion. Black can get a lot of very active play, but black also has to be very precise. Okay, so the first move was bishop takes d6, and I did see this. But what I was worried about was knight to f6 check. Okay, so I need to play king to h8, because king to g7 will allow check, and then king to f8 is a little bit too weakening for my taste, because bishop to f6 check is already a threat, and I'm probably getting checkmated. So okay, king to h8. White takes the bishop. If white decides to take the rook, I can take the bishop on f4, and then I can take the piece on e8. If you do a simple material count, it's quite obvious that I'm up a full piece. So Shabalov, will be completely losing on that line. So he cannot afford to take the rook. He must take the bishop. I fork the knight and the bishop. He plays queen to c3. And I saw up to here in my analysis. And I was really worried about the ideas that white had along this diagonal. And what I had completely missed, and I wonder if you guys see the next move, which is knight to d4 double exclam. Offering up a full piece. Obviously, white can't play queen takes d4 because of queen takes c2 checkmate, a theme that was already present earlier in the game. And, okay, if white decides to take the knight on d4, I can take the queen. And I'm just picking up pieces here, and, I'm still up in exchange. White has a ruined structure, and, it's not. This will probably be harder for me to convert, but at the same time, I'm not worried about losing anymore. And if you also consider it, the knight on f6 is kind of trapped. So this is one line. The computer recommends queen takes c8, after which rook takes c8. I'm still forking the bishop and knight. So he takes my knight, I take his bishop. I'm forking both knights. Knight takes f5, rook takes f6, knight e3, takes f2, and in order to get rid of the threats on c2, white has to give up his last rook. And I'm up a clean exchange here. And if you've noticed, pawns have actually equalized. It's 2 versus 3 on both sides of the board. And at this point, it's just a matter of technique. Again, this isn't so easy to convert, especially against a player such as strong as Shabalov, but I think given this kind of material odds, I would have a pretty good chance. I would have to walk my king towards the center. I'd want to get a little bit of space, and I'd need to utilize my rooks, and I need to limit white's ability to push his queenside pawns. But this is a very good position for black, obviously, and something that I had missed. And if only I'd seen this knight d4 move, which would be a great move to play in a simul, but okay, such things aren't so easy when you only have about 6 or 7 minutes before you have to make your move again. So okay, I didn't take this, but after knight takes d5, I'm not losing, so we still have the game going. So rook takes d5, and then here I got a little bit carried away. I thought I could force white's rook kind of out of the way with bishop to e4, and completely forgot about rook d7. So maybe you can say this is a little bit of a panicky move. I probably should have looked at moves like a6 or something of that nature, but a little bit more active because bishop to e4 doesn't really improve my position. So my opponent plays rook to d7, and all of a sudden I'm starting to realize I'm in a little bit of trouble because now my opponent has threats of rook to c7 and then rook takes b7, or rook to c7 and then bishop takes c6 maybe in some lines. So I thought my next move was kind of forced, which was rook to e7. We traded. I took with knight because I think there's some tactical complications after bishop takes, because rook to e1, and then ideas of bishop takes c6, and the bishops are kind of loose. So that's why I took with the knight. Shabalov still played rook to e1 because it's the most active move. I offered a bishop trade here, and then here was where I used my last pass, because it's not so easy to see what white needs to do. For example, the idea that I had with playing bishop to c6 was to play this move knight to d5. But I have problems. You see, before, in this position, if white just moves the bishop back anywhere to like c4 or plays the move knight to d4, the g2 pawn is always going to hang, right? So like, let's say bishop takes c6, queen takes c6. If this knight moves, the g2 pawn hangs. So this is why Shabalov played bishop to f1, prophylaxis. And now if I play the move I was looking at, knight to d5, things aren't so easy, because now, once white moves this bishop, let's say bishop to h6, this knight can still go to d4, and g2 isn't hanging, and I have a very passive position because my bishop is kind of blocked in by my own knight. My knight doesn't actually have any threats, so it's just kind of in the way, and maybe even a tactical liability. This bishop on f8 is kind of useless, and I still haven't made anything of my a8 rook. Meanwhile, white's two major pieces are in the center and ready to attack, so this is not a position that you want against one of the most aggressive players in the United States. So here I kind of took in a principle of statics and dynamics, and this was a move I didn't want to have to make, but I think it didn't turn out so bad, which was the idea that, okay, yes, white is up a pawn, but, okay, it's not so clear how he's going to convert yet with so many pieces on the board, but statically I'm much worse here. So when you're statically worse, in order to change the balance of the game, you have to find dynamic moves, and in this position, I chose the move bishop takes c6. Oops, not bishop takes c6. Bishop takes f3. What am I talking about? So bishop to f1, bishop takes f3. The idea being that, okay, I get rid of his knight, which was annoying. So he no longer has knight to d4 or knight to e5 ideas. And he's forced to play g takes f3. So I forced him to create some sort of positional concession. And after queen to c6, rook to e4, knight to f5, I have an outpost for my knight. So this is all fine and dandy. And I think here Shabalov was starting to get in trouble in his other games. He'd spent a lot of time on my game and not so much on the others. And there was one game where he actually went down in exchange. So he played the move bishop to c4, which, initially looks like a pretty good move. You're putting pressure on f7. You're trying to take advantage of the fact that I no longer have the light squared bishop. So if you attack on the light squares, theoretically I have one fewer defender because my bishop on f8 can't defend light squares. But I don't know if he fully assessed how equal the position got after this sequence of moves, because now we approach an opposite colored bishop ending. And here I took bishop takes d6, because after rook takes d6 I have a little bit of untangling to do actually after rook to e1, e8, because now I have to play king to g7, I have to move my rook, and then I can move my bishop, and this is just too much. So I chose bishop takes d6, and the position should be a draw. Opposite colored bishop ending. But okay, I'm down a pawn, and Shabalov doesn't want to lose any games, and eventually he wound up winning all 20. And I thought his display of endgame technique compared to my lack of one was really telling here, because he executed his plan flawlessly. So his first move was c3, and it seems fairly innocuous, but what he's actually doing is he's creating space for his king, while at the same time putting his pawns on dark squares. So he wants to limit the activity of my bishop. That's his first step. So I play king to f8, so I can move this bishop away and control e7 and e8 with my king. I also remove the pin on the f7 pawn. King to c2. Bishop to c5. So far I'm doing fine. f3. I played rook to e8 here. f5 is also fine. Bishop to d5, and here I panicked. My first major mistake of the game, I think. So here I was dead set on playing the move f5 with the idea of b6. And then I got really scared all of a sudden, because after f5, right before Shabalov came on board, I saw that rook to c4 was an option. b6, b4, and I thought I was a little bit too passive here. In reality, I think I might have a move like bishop to e3, or something of the nature of bishop to d6, keeping this rook honest on this pawn, and then the rook's actually not that active. But I only saw this a couple of minutes, or maybe even seconds before Shabalov came on board, and I kind of freaked out and played the move rook takes e4, which of course is a major concession, because now the concession I made white have to double the pawns is now undone. So Now he's just up a clean pawn, but okay, we still have an opposite colored bishop ending. b6, king to d3. So here I have to play the move f6. This does two things. One, it gets it off a light square, so it's harder to attack. And, you're supposed to want to put your pawns in your opponent's, on the color of your opponent's bishop, as Capablanca would say. But at the same time, if you have the weaker position, sometimes it's advantageous to put them on the opposite color. And by doing so, I can make sure he doesn't get a passed pawn so easily, play king e6, king d6, and hope for the best. This move was kind of important because after king to e7, he plays the move e5, and now I'm kind of cramped, and this f7 pawn's kind of stuck. So here, I actually, I went about the wrong plan. So I played h6 with the idea of playing g5, thinking that I could maybe create some counterplay on the king side. But in doing so, I actually allowed him to create a pass pawn here, which was close to fatal. I think I have to play move a5 here. And the reason why is this a7 pawn is actually a weakness. And as you guys see later in the game, Shabalov actually marches the king all the way down, sacks a pawn to undermine my complete structure, and with the pawn on a7, there's just no way to defend it. So it was actually game losing. So a5 was critical here too. Okay, I played h6. He played h3. If he had played h4 to stop g5, I actually have a nice little idea, h5 and then bishop to f2. So that's why he chose at h3. And then, so here was my mistake. I played g5, thinking I was getting something. f5. And then, okay, I played the computer best move, which was f6. But conceptually, this is already a major problem because now white will have a protected passed pawn on e6. And I thought I could create a fortress because the pawn could only go to e7, which is a dark square. And I thought I could hold the fort on the king side. On queen side, rather. Unfortunately, I just have too many weaknesses. And once he plays b4, this pawn on a7 becomes a permanent weakness. Bishop to f2, e6. So I played h5 here, and I should have waited. The idea with h5 was I realized white could just march his king in to h5, and once it gets to h5, I have no way of protecting the pawn. Actually, once it gets to g4, I would have the same problem too. So I played h5, but this should take last priority. I should have played a move like king to d6 and started moving my king over, and found a way to try to get my bishop to d6. Maybe king to d6, king to c7, because I'm still in the square, and bishop g3, bishop d6, and then maybe h5, h4. And maybe then I'm still drawing, but already the computer's saying like plus 0.8, which means that white can grind this game. h5 though, and I'm already worse. Bishop f3, h4. And this is a major concession because now, I needed to create counterplay on the king side, but now I'll never be able to move any of these pawns. Meanwhile, white is the one who actually has the advantage of the king side. So a3. White's setting up the principle of two weaknesses. He's getting ready to march his king down the board. I play bishop g3. I try to hold his king to the pawn. Shabalov says, okay, take my pawn. I take his pawn. And then here I think you can kind of see I'm in a little bit of trouble. And I didn't know what else to do. I tried bishop to a3 because if he plays b5, okay, I'm losing a pawn, but maybe I can try to hold something, play king d6, king c7, bishop to b4. But okay, Shabalov is a much better player than that. And he just inserted the move king takes a7. After which I realized after bishop takes, king takes, the pawn's going down uncontested. My king can't help, so this game is just game over. So this was a really interesting game, I thought. Obviously, the opening didn't go Shabalov planned, but he was able to regroup really easily after a couple missed opportunities on my part. And then the endgame I thought was really telling because it was very methodical on how Shabalov decided to go about improving his advantage. So, okay, not quite the result I wanted, but it's not every day you get to play the 4-time U.S. champion. With this video, I wish Shabalov the best of luck in the 2016 U.S. Chess Championships, and I hope you guys are looking forward to my article on Tuesday. This is Isaac Steincamp signing off from the Chess Summit Network.